Hey guys, it's Heather here with Underwater Panther, and I am honestly extremely surprised that my millennial religion, morality, spirituality video took off. And I didn't see that coming. I figured the relationship portion would be more of a hot topic, and I'm actually impressed that people want to talk about religion. I think that's great. I think that's really great. I've been deep in it my entire life. I was raised private Catholic schooling. I'm a Native American. I get it. So I want to talk about it. So this video is called When Faith Becomes a Brand. I'm going to try to stay on track here. It's very late. I just got off work, but I want to talk about this. I think it's great. I'm happy people want to talk about this. Like, I've been so freaking far deep into the Charlie Kirk and his businesses and Turning Point. I didn't know anything about these people until, he passed away. And it's extremely sad, and I can see that politics and religion should never cross paths when there's big money involved and all of the mega churches, and it's just I mean, I just don't really see many people talking. Barron has mentioned it, and I've been in this world. I cannot stand politics. I hate politics so freaking much. But I've become more involved with learning about, what's going on and going over history with my generational series and books. I've been really deep diving into history. Whoever writes history wins the storyline. Like, I've got a lot of Native American generational trauma going on here. So anyway, I don't know. I can't stand politics. I am extremely spiritual. It's something that needs to be talked about, I think, on a different kind of level. So, religion, virtue signaling, and the collapse of moral authority. There's a difference between faith and branding, between morality and moral performance, between spiritual conviction and virtue signaling backed by power. And when those lines collapse, religion stops orienting conscience and starts manufacturing loyalty. This video is not about attacking belief. I have studied all cultures. I am deep in combining many different systems together, so I definitely don't come from that lens. It's about protecting it. Because when religion merges with political power, it stops restraining violence and starts justifying it. This has never ended well, historically, spiritually, or psychologically. What religion is supposed to do? At its core, religion exists to do three things: restrain power, cultivate conscience, and protect the vulnerable. Every major spiritual tradition, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, indigenous cosmologies, includes explicit warnings about idolatry, false prophets, power cloaked in righteousness, and leaders who speak for God but serve themselves. Religion is meant to limit ego, not inflate it, to humble authority, not sanctify it. When religion blesses domination instead of restraint, it has already failed its own test. When religion becomes a brand religion has recognizable traits: slogans instead of scripture, or cherry picking scripture, emotional spectacle over moral rigor, loyalty test frames as faith, enemies clearly labeled, dissent treated as heresy, dissent treated as heresy, constant fundraising, identity over integrity. Faith becomes merchandisable. Morality becomes performative. God becomes a logo. At that point, belief is no longer about truth. It's about belonging to the right side. This is where virtue signaling enters, not as sincerity, but as currency. Religion and politics, the red line. There is a reason the separation of church and state exists, not to protect the state from religion, but to protect religion from power. That's a whole deep rabbit hole in itself. When political movements wrap themselves in divine authority, policy becomes moralized, violence becomes justified, compromise becomes betrayal, conscience becomes subordinate to party. We see this across history: medieval crusades, state churches, colonial civilizing missions, modern nationalist theologies. The pattern is always the same. God is on our side, therefore our actions are beyond question. That sentence has justified more bloodshed than any ideology on earth. Modern examples without partisan spin. This is not confined to one nation or one political camp. You see it when states invoke divine destiny to justify violence, governments frame military action as sacred, political organizations use faith as a mobilization tool, mega churches functions like campaign headquarters. Religious leaders become influencers first and shepherds second. In the United States, movements like Turning Point USA and figures like Charlie Kirk openly blend religious identity with political allegiance, turning faith into a culture war instrument rather than a moral compass. Globally, similar dynamics appear when the state of Israel or any nation frames geopolitical violence as a divinely sanctioned rather than ethically accountable. This is not a statement about Jews, Christians, Muslims, or any people. It is a statement about power laundering itself through God. Why this destroys morality itself. Virtue signaling destroys morality because it rewards appearance over action. It replaces introspection with outrage. It trains people to perform goodness instead of practice it. It externalizes evil onto others. It silences conscience through group identity. True morality is quiet. It is inconvenient. It often costs you status. It does not trend well. When morality becomes a brand, it no longer restrains behavior, it excuses it. What real spirituality looks like. Authentic spirituality does not require enemies, spectacle, dominance, political power, constant signaling. It requires humility, accountability, restraint, care for the vulnerable, willingness to question oneself first. Every legitimate spiritual tradition agrees on this. If your faith makes you cruel, it is not faith, it is ego with a halo. Why millennials and Gen Z reject this? Younger generations are not rejecting spirituality. They grew up watching wars justified by God, abuse covered by scripture, politicians quoting faith while serving corporations, churches protecting power instead of people. So they didn't abandon morality, they internalized it. This is why they distrust institutions, they separate spirituality from hierarchy, they refuse religious nationalism, they seek embodied ethics, not sermons. This is not moral decay, it is moral recalibration. Here's the truth that matters. Religion loses its authority the moment it stops questioning power and starts serving it. Faith should make you harder to control, not easier to mobilize. And any movement that needs God to silence conscience has already betrayed the divine it claims to represent. God does not need branding. Truth does not need coercion. And morality does not survive being turned into a weapon. Embodied spirituality versus institutional religion. Why money is always the turning point. There is a moment in every spiritual tradition where money enters and truth leaves. Not all at once, not loudly, but structurally. This video is about the difference between embodied spirituality and institutional religion, and why money is always the dividing line. Embodied spirituality, what it actually is. Embodied spirituality is not an institution. It is not hierarchy and it is not brand. It is lived, not performed. It shows up as conscious before compliance, restraint before dominance, humility before certainty, and care before control. Embodied spirituality answers one question only: how do I live rightly, even when no one is watching? It does not need stages, slogans, donations to be blessed, enemies to define itself. It regulates the nervous system, it deepens responsibility, and it limits ego. This is why it is dangerous to power. Institutional religion, when structure replaces conscience. Institutional religion begins the moment belief is organized for scale. This is where doctrine replaces discernment, obedience replaces ethics, authority replaces accountability. At first, institutions claim they exist to protect the faith, but structurally, something else happens. Resources must be maintained, influence must be expanded, loyalty must be enforced, and dissent must be controlled. This is where money enters as necessity and then quietly becomes the priority. Why money corrupts religion faster than politics. Politics admits it wants power. Religion claims moral authority. When money enters religion, belief becomes a product. Morality becomes a marketing strategy. Fear becomes a fundraising tool. You start seeing salvation sold as access, guilt converted into donations, loyalty measured financially, and leaders insulated from consequences. At that point, the institution is no longer accountable to truth, only to revenue flow. This is not cynicism, it's historical pattern recognition. The moment religion becomes dangerous. Religion becomes dangerous at the exact moment it says this belief structure must be protected at all costs. Because now power must be justified, violence can be framed as sacred, money can be moralized, and silence can be enforced. This is where whistleblowers are crushed, reformers are expelled, truth tellers are framed as threats, and spiritual figures become liabilities. Not because they are wrong, but because they disrupt the economic structure. Why true spiritual figures are always a problem. Every authentic spiritual figure threatens institutions because they bypass hierarchy, reject monetization, speak directly to conscience, and dissolves fear-based control. They make people harder to manage. Historically, these figures are exiled, silenced, discredited, imprisoned, or killed, not for belief, but for destabilizing economic and power systems built around belief. This is not about one modern personality. This is a structural truth that repeats across centuries. Why modern faith brands feel empty. When religion becomes a political accessory, a media operation, a donor machine, or a cultural identity badge, people feel it instantly in their bodies because embodied spirituality regulates. Institutional religion agitates. One claims the nervous system, the other mobilizes it. That is the tell. So, yeah, millennial here. Why millennials and Gen Z walked away. Younger generations didn't reject God, they rejected faith used to excuse greed. Morality used to justify violence, belief systems that protect abusers, churches that act like corporations, leaders who preach sacrifice but live insulated. So they turned inward toward embodiment, ethics without spectacle, spirituality without intermediaries, and conscience without permission. This isn't loss of faith, it's refusal to participate in spiritual extraction. So, embodied spirituality asks what is right. Institutional religion asks what is profitable. The moment money becomes sacred, truth becomes expendable. And history shows us this without exception. Any system that needs money to protect God has already replaced the divine with power. So yeah, I feel better now that I got my religion video out and my loyalty testing video out. I am revamping my millennial music section and I definitely feel on one, but I am so freaking happy people want to talk about religion, morality, spirituality. I mean, it's so freaking sad to see, what has happened with Turning Point, that whole thing. I just cannot believe. I'm an extremely empathetic person, don't get me wrong. I think it's just very dangerous to mix politics and religion. It's just there's so much to be said. There's just so much to be said, and I can see right through it, and I looked at the money figures, I looked at the behind the scenes, what was going on, not just the branding. Yeah. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it's an extremely important topic, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for being here. Like and subscribe. Feel free to comment your thoughts and feelings. I appreciate you guys getting the topic rolling. I truly do. I appreciate it more than I can ever explain, to be honest. So anyways, take care, y'all.